ways of working, and where there are opportunities to collaborate and to work effectively, we do that, and we try then not to get in the way unnecessarily of other partners who might actually be better placed to manage an asset. So I think that applies.
I understand that it's that long-term horizon. You know, land is not being made anymore, as it were. So it is a very special type of asset, and I think we know how utterly important the long-term securing of toilets, for example, is. So it just feels to me as if we need a little bit more assurance on that. It's not, yeah, they say they're going to, it's where is our horizon on that?
Okay. Mike, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd, thank you. I attended a public meeting in Newport Town Hall. The hall was full, and it was unanimously passed that this would be put before the National Park because it's all part of the bigger picture at Newport and Parrot Beach. I was very interested in on page 340 on the risk considerations. You can read it, but I'll read it out in saying that your officers have sought and received assurances from Newport Town Council that with the sole exception of the introduction of parking charges, the public's current access to and use of the subject land will remain unchanged under the direct ownership and control. I mean, that's quite a commitment from Newport Town Council. And with that in mind, I would like to propose that the recommendation. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. I'm just asking Peregrine to come in for a minute, if you might, don't mind.
I don't think we can give you that assurance because basically what we're doing is giving up our interest in this. I think based on the public statements from Newport Town Council and based on the fact that I don't think the toilets there were one of our priority areas and therefore we're not funding, I'd say their future is probably more likely to be secured by doing this than not. Having said that, that's my opinion. We haven't got, you know, if they suddenly turn around in 5 years' time and do something entirely different, there's nothing we can do. But we're leasing the land. I think it would be marginally different if we owned the land and we were selling it in a long-term leaseholder. So I can't give you that assurance. It's a judgment call on our part that we would support another public body to do the best for what they think is their community.
Okay, Madeleine?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, that was my feeling very much reading this, that we are looking forward to our toilet strategy. It wasn't one of the ones we'd identified as obviously it's important, very important for the local community. I suspect that that's why they've come forward with this idea. But from our point of view, given the scope of what we were doing in our constraints, and to my mind, securing this as a public asset, particularly managed by those who are most affected by it, I think is critical. And clearly this is we know it's an important site for locals and visitors. To my mind, this seems a very positive way forward to be working with the town council and also, as Jess identified, perhaps slightly reducing our liability, but also giving the ability for that very important facility to be maintained, where sadly we hadn't identified it as being one that we were able to do. I'd be happy to second.
Thank you. Any other comments before I go to the vote? Councillor Mike James has proposed and Madeleine has seconded. I'll go to the vote then. All those in favour, please, that we give delegation to the Chief Executive to complete a full and final nil premium surrender of its lease of the subject property to Newport Town Council. All in favour? I think that's unanimous.
You close this, anybody's in.
Did you?
No.
Oh, sorry. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Yeah, good. Thank you very much. It's not in the agenda, but I'm just going to ask Tegrin to include an agenda, a supplementary agenda on the Oriel Park cafe lease.
I'm just checking that I'm doing this.
No, I'm doing
You're doing that.
I'm going.
I was happy to do it, but.
I should have a safeguarding policy.
Oh, no, we will. This is just a supplementary. I thought I'd slip it in here because it was relevant to the sort of similar to what we've just done. So
Okay,
We're talking about a stakeholder group now.
yeah, we do it. No, so we sent a supplementary agenda. The Cafe Oriel Park, the previous lease holders had decided not to extend their lease after 5 years. We've been through some changes there over the time. I think over 15 years, the cafe, we feel, is having some investment there. So what we went out with a view that the fixtures and fittings required investment over time by the new leaseholder rather than us doing it. We had a very positive response. I think 3 responded. And we had a preferred bidder, if you like, who have decided, who have experience in the field, local, have run cafes in the past. They were very keen to hit the ground running, and therefore we gave them a 1-year license in order to get started, and they're already up and running in a matter of a couple of weeks. And in order for them to justify the investment in the infrastructure and all of that, we're proposing a 15-year lease. 1.5 there. So it's basically, rather than delay the process any further, is to ask for a delegated authority for us to carry on with that. They've only got a couple of weeks, but certainly all our due diligence and our suggests that this will be a good partnership for the future. The value of it is the same as we were getting now, but has been penned by the value of the market, if you like. That's what it was offered. There are break clauses every 5 years to review there. So it's just delegate that so that we can keep that process, get that process done as quickly as possible.
Rosie,
2 questions. One is the fee an annual uplift, or is it related to turnover in any way?
I think it's a 5-year review there.
Okay.
So
It's a fixed fee
Fixed
and then
fee,
5
yeah.
year. And do we have, amongst the break clauses, do we only have a 5-year, or do we have a performance related break?
I think it's mostly a 5-year one, because actually part of it is to is to pass the liability and the running of it over to there. To be perfectly honest, I think, obviously, if there were issues of real serious concern in terms of how it would impact on reputationally and there are other means of dealing with that.
Within the agreement, there are negotiation clauses of.
Yeah. But to be honest, I think we're in the process of agreeing the clause. So actually, I can suggest that.
That would be useful. I think an assurance on that would be useful, because that's normal to have a sort of a conciliation, as it were, a sort of an informal resolution of issues and a routine matter. And I'd love to support that. I think it's a good way forward. Congratulations for getting it in quickly, because it's not a mean feat.
I've got a couple of, I've got Simon, Gwyn, and then Rachel, please.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to second that. I mean, running cafes, I remember when Oriel Park opened, I think the park was running itself.
Yeah.
I remember having meetings looking at offering franchises and so forth. So, to justify a significant investment of that nature, they need security of tenure, and 15 years seems reasonable. So I'm happy to second the delegated approval.
Thank you. Gwyn, please.
Just a question, really. Obviously, I support what's been done, especially extending the leave to 50. But I'm just wondering, is there anything that's proposed there going to possibly compromise any ideas that come up for developing Oriel Park?
I did ask Gary this question, actually. 15 years is a long time we don't think so, to be perfectly honest. Obviously, if you took fairly drastic decisions, they might have an impact, but we'd have to input vision for anything out of the ordinary in it, in terms of, there's termination on both sides anyway. there, so.
You don't need to put a special.
Well, I think we would, I think as part of agreeing any lease, we would have to have mechanisms so that we're not unduly tied to doing one thing just because we've got that
Mutually.
being fair to them as well, isn't it?
Rachel, please.
Yeah, thank you, Gwyn, for that. That was a very similar concern that I had. So whilst I understand the need to do this, it's really sensible. It mustn't sort of stymie any of our options, because 15 years is a long time. So it was the immediate report. We've just commissioned, haven't we, a consultant to look at that. So you don't want to sort of limit them in any way. So it's probably worth being honest about that with them. But then definitely with our financial situation, we wouldn't want to be tied. So we do need a get out clause, I would suggest, over that period. So yes, the 15 years, but anything could happen in that time, couldn't it? For us to say that we can maintain our park for that time. I hope it doesn't happen, don't get me wrong. But we don't be tied in for an agreement that we're then stuck with some expense on. So yeah, we need a strong get out clause, I think.
Well, I'll pass that, we'll pass that on and take account of that.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you,
Madeline, Madeline, please, and then I'll come over to
It was, again, just to build on that, one assumes that all of the applicants, and indeed the successful one, were aware of the master plan and so on. I mean, it's been in public, you know, that we're discussing this and so on. So hopefully that will be covered.
Claire, please. Or was it Morgan? I'm not sure. I don't mind.
I was just thinking, as far as food standards is concerned, I know the county monitor food standards and inspect premises. Would we have any sort of monitoring in place?
Obviously, there's the national monitoring, which is, I think, is done by the council. I think our expectation is that they would hit the higher standards and not have a negative impact on this. I think it's. I don't know enough about the food standards set up there, you know. But if they slip to a 3 or a 4, I don't we'd pull the plug. But actually, I think we did have one previously, and it was made very clear to them that there was an expectation that they hit the higher standards. I'm not sure whether that was in the lease or whether that was. You need to sort of.
That we do get involved.
Reputation.
Yeah, reputation.
Reputation.
Thank you, Chair. I was reassured that we had some 3 bids in the mix. I just wanted to understand what the difference was in those bids. Was it quality, cost? What was the differentiator between the 3 to make the decision?
I have to be honest, I wasn't directly involved in that. All I know is that I think we can provide that information, probably not in a public forum for you, but not at a later date. I believe the ones that were successful were significantly ahead of the others, but I'd have to ask others to give you the actual reason for that.
Circulated.
Yeah.
Thank you. Provide that. Thank you. Good.
Sorry, just to come back into the mutuality of fee. It does feel to me that if there's a standstill and only a review at 5 years, that does seem to me a big gap. We've seen how things change. You know, again. When we're responding as we do to challenge the world our commerciality, I would recommend that somebody with the astuteness of Gary looks at that pretty hard.
I would channel my inner Gary and say his argument would be, having gone to the market, that's what the market is telling us. You know, you can challenge that, I accept, but that's
Gary's.
Yeah.
No further comments, Rosie. I think you proposed.
Yes.
And Simon, I think you seconded. No further comments. I'll go to the vote. All those in favour of giving delegated authority. Thank you. That's that one done. We are moving on to report number 5324, safeguarding policy, and that's our learning and inclusion team leader, Graham Peake, who's going to provide a presentation. Thank you, Graham.
I have no presentation, more of an introduction.
Well, that should be fine. That's fine.
Laying down any expectations.
It's good. It's getting nearer lunchtime.
I'm sensing that might be the vibe.
I'm hoping everybody's ready, don't you?
Yes.
So yes, I'm here to present the revised safeguarding policy for the National Park Authority to members. Really, the recommendation is that it's adopted as policy to replace the statement. Haven't really got a lot else to say other than the fact that, just to note that the scope of it is that it's for members, staff, volunteers, everybody who's associated with the National Park Authority, really. Not just those people who work with children and vulnerable adults. So that's something worth pointing out. We haven't changed the format particularly. It's been reviewed by our internal safeguarding group, and we've looked at external kind of factors that might affect the policy. But essentially, we've reviewed the existing framework of the policy, and it covers really much the same areas, but takes account of kind of any updates in terms of good practice and legislation. I think that's probably.
Is it in draft? Is it circulated to us in draft a long time ago?
Well, at the last NPA, I made a presentation. I reported more generally about safeguarding and the kind of from the previous year. So I think that might have been my last report. But this is the actual statement, which wasn't available for the last meeting. So I'm happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you. And I see Julie's got a hand up, please.
Thank you very much, Graham. I've had occasion to experience a number of issues with regard to safeguarding at another organisation. Couple of questions. Am I correct in thinking that the training mandatory is reported through to the People Services Committee that I chair, so that we can monitor how many staff are trained in the basic safeguarding, how many aren't and need to be, and how many there are that require the higher level of training? So that's my first question. Second question is, do you have a process in place for a missing child within any of our premises, Castell Henllys, Oriel Park, etc.? Because I couldn't see anything about that. And then in another organisation, all our members, trustees, have been required to undertake online safeguarding training, which is ultimately this board is responsible. So that is something I would expect that we would be required to do. And I can't remember that we have been asked to do that in the past, Graham.
Okay, so in response to the first question around recording training, that is now something the personnel team are recording and will report on to your committee, I would imagine. So that would include the Group A safeguarding training, which is the online training. Skipping to the final question about members, it's not something that we've kind of insisted on in the past across the board, but I think it's possibly something that, as you say, other organisations do. It's certainly something that we can look at. There's an element that's available, so it's something we can look at. It is available, so it would be difficult to fit that into the programme of training that members do.
I think there's a missing child somewhere, wasn't there?
Yes, that was missing child. Coming on to the missing child, because that's the one I was thinking.
She thought she had the experience.
Yeah. So in honesty, it's not within the kind of it wasn't within the kind of scope of the statement when we reviewed it. We would expect there to be reports of issues around safeguarding for children, missing children. If I'm honest, I think at a centre level, they will have kind of plans in place for reporting children and how they can respond to that. But it isn't part of our safeguarding statement as such. Although, if clearly if a child's missing for any period of time, it then becomes a safeguarding issue. And within the context of our safeguarding plan, I would expect people to let us know relatively quickly. But yeah, I think when it comes to lost children, it's possibly a kind of consideration about how long they've been lost, where they're lost, who, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure that's.
Sorry, Graham, I need to push back. Firstly, I'd like it recorded and picked up under People's Services Committee that I'd like to see exactly how many staff are trained at stage A, I think you referred to, and how many of those need to be trained at the higher level. The ELMS, yeah, I think that must be the software package that I've gone through. It was mandatory for all the trustees of this particular organisation to undertake it, and it was quite an eye-opener. I thought it would be relatively easy. There were 6 questions to answer, and it took me 3 goes, and I wasn't the only trustee. And with regard to the missing child, can I just say that you need to tighten up your practices? We had that situation. We did have to alert the police, and they were not happy that we had delayed alerting them. They have a particular process protocol that they should be alerted immediately, children and vulnerable adults. So if that happens in an area that we are responsible for, i.e. our tourist centres, not so much out and about in the national park, although if we've got leaders leading a group and a child goes missing, I would hope that we have some procedures in place. But can I ask you to have a look at that again, Graham, and flag that with the necessary people? Lessons learned from another organisation mean that I'm flagging this with all the other organisations that I serve with. Thank you. Oh, by the way, we found the missing child. They were actually sitting in the middle of some water, enjoying themselves, but they were non-communicative child, so there was very vulnerable, and the parents were extremely grateful for the process that we had, but we have reviewed that and tightened up. I can share that with you if you need me to. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll include those.
Yes, I've noted that. Yeah.
Thank you. Rachel, please.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Graham. It's a really comprehensive policy. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I do agree with the comments made about the process for missing children or any vulnerable adults as well. I think it's worth having that in there, and early communication, so all staff know about that, not those. It's really important in that situation, isn't it? Everybody on site is aware of the procedures, the alarms and things like that, not just those with a particular group in hand. Agree with that. I'm also used to doing mandatory training. I thought it was a requirement for this. I do work a lot in education, so I think there's lots of packages out there we could pick off a shelf. An online one maybe, general safeguarding. The additional point I wanted to raise was you're very balanced throughout the whole thing, and I appreciate what you're trying to do. But the one I want to pick up on is travel, where it suggests that nobody should be really in a vehicle with just a child unaccompanied, so one-on-one, but you're allowing those caveats, and there's a few of those instances throughout. I know there are certain situations where it becomes really awkward. What do you do in a particular given situation? But I was thinking perhaps we ought to be a bit clearer with staff on that, because I think throughout there's a few of them where we are sort of allowing it, although I think reading between the lines of what you're saying, this really shouldn't be allowed, but your hand is forced in a particular situation to do something. But I'd prefer if we were a bit more hard line actually on some of those, because traveling one-to-one with a child and staff member, I think you really are putting staff potentially at risk. And normally across all the different sort of education places I've worked, you're pretty much told you don't do it. You have to have 2 members of staff in that situation. So yeah, I was surprised with that one over all of the others. There was some about dressing, first aid. There were some others where you touch on the same balance. The first aid one, I kind of come down with you. I get it. But the travel one, it tends to be non-negotiable usually in education settings, especially taking somebody in your own car. So I'd be interested in your view, Graham, and how you've come down that way. But that was the one that surprised me of them all.
Thank you, Rachel.
Well, I agree. We need to be black and white in these situations. I know that particular kind of area of policy was kind of influenced to an extent by the fact that we have placement students out with rangers sometimes, and that
right.
that slight accommodation was there to make that adjustment so that they're able to do that and provide those placement opportunities. Now, you know, our ranges, as with other team members, are kind of DBS checked and go through all the processes. So that was there specifically for that instance, to allow that opportunity for young people to be placements. Now, on balance, you know, maybe we do need to be rigorous in that context, but you know, that's why it's there. So that's my response.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so whether you say in all exception, you know, we don't want staff to do this, but there's one, you know, perhaps they're on 2-week placements, you have a particular agreement with a parent or something, but it's the safeguarding 2 ways, isn't it? And we need to safeguard staff as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Graham. I know it's a very difficult role and varying levels of complexity. But I wanted really to support my colleagues in that we need to be very clear on our boundaries when it comes to these things, that we support our staff. And I heard my other colleagues mentioning about vulnerable adults. I think that's also extremely important, that we are aware that there are many children and adults who are classified as vulnerable for various reasons. We want to do everything we can to let carers and parents know that we are being very responsible when their vulnerable people are with us. And again, with the case of a missing person, that it is straight to the police. It really is. That's absolutely best practice. So I just wanted to support you, Graham, in feeling confident in bringing these policies forward, because it's about protecting everybody and ensuring the safety of everybody when they're accessing our facilities. And it's not just about making sure people are safe, but being seen to be actively doing that, and to reassure carers that in fact everything that is reasonable to do is being done, so that people can access our wonderful environments that are, by their nature, have a level of risk attached to them. So we can only do our best, and our best is to have very clear boundaries.
Thank you. Thank you. Julie, do you want to come back again?
Yes, I feel, Chair, that we cannot approve this policy today. It raises huge concerns with me, and clearly Rachel and Sarah share those. I think we need to look in more detail about the missing child, those in cars, and also in terms of training for members. So I strongly urge that this shouldn't be approved today, that some further work should be undertaken. Thank you ever so much, Graham. I know you've worked hard on this already, but as Sarah said, there's examples of good practice out there, and we need to be absolutely spot on this. So I'll leave it there, and I can all, you know, I'm sure many of us can share other policies with you, but I can't approve this today. Sorry, Chair.
No, that's fine. Thank you for your honesty.
Can I just ask the questions on the implications of not approving it today? So, for example, does it leave us with an old policy that is even less robust, and what we should be saying is approve this one and bring an amendment to the next one? That's my question.
Yeah, you know, we have a policy and we update everything periodically and bring it here. It's the missing children. I've just emailed the centre manager to get their copies. Actually, if they come back, I'll share it. But a few of them are away. I don't. It's what you expect in different places. I don't diminish the importance of missing children, and Julie's raised it previously, and I forwarded it to the relevant people there. I would have expected our protocol on missing children to be within operational procedures for the centres or the relevant area, as opposed to in a policy. There's no problem in putting it in a policy, but you can think of a whole host of instances of which you need a response that would be within the operational policy, of which it wouldn't necessarily be in a safeguarding policy. That's not to say we don't take it seriously and all of that. So, you know, if we can include anything in the policy. It's out there, our policies, and if you wish to include that in a policy, I suppose it raises a question: what aren't you equivalents then there? And I'd rather not have a policy that's 50 pages and lots of examples. I don't think we would be, to be perfectly honest. So happy to take your guidance, but you know, we're going through a review process. We do have our policy there, and I'm more than happy for you to be, as members, to participate in training, but we need everybody to do it then.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I'm
Julie,
going
wants
to
to go back.
Maureen, and then was it you raising your hand?
Yeah, yeah.
Tim, and then back to Julie. Maureen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, you know, you're talking about the child being alone in a car, or a young person, or some adult. But could you, you know, when you're re-looking at the policies, could you include being in any confined space with a young person or a vulnerable adult? Because I'm thinking back to education. I mean, teachers wouldn't go into a classroom if the door was closed, if there was just one child. You know, I know you can get really paranoid and not trust people, and it gets ridiculous, I think. But if you are accused of something, it's really hard to prove that nothing happened.
That is very much that protecting yourself against allegations thing is quite strong, I think, in there. And yes, it's not just about cars, it's about anywhere really where you're out of sight of other people, either a young person or vulnerable adult. And that is part of the training that our teams have as well. But yeah, I take your point. Yeah,
it's so easy to overlook, but if there's an accusation made, it's very, very bad.
Okay, I'm going to go to Tim, Julie, and then.
Can I just ask? There's a lot of emphasis on vulnerable adults. Surely these vulnerable adults would be visited in our sites, so it would be down to the operational things of something going wrong while they're on our sites, because the majority of vulnerable adults this day and age have got carers with them. So surely it's more of the operational thing than the safeguarding of. That's the way I look at it. And then the other, what was the other thing I was thinking of? No, it's going to my mind there. But so counsellors and stuff, we do safeguarding. We all do safeguarding. And you know, it's spammed down our throats all the time, and we all keep up to date with that. So can you not share that information between PCC and Pembrokeshire Coast National Park, or do we have to do another one? You know, it's just more
about how we should join forces with training.
So those are just my comments on that.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to go back to Julie, and then I'll go to Ange.
Thank you. On that last point, yes, if PCC members have done the training and they've got their certificate from the online training, that should be sufficient. But and also those of us on Welsh Government, I have the certificate, that should be sufficient. But we need to ensure that as many of our members have that. With regard to Tegwin's response on the missing child, sorry Tegwin, it doesn't tick that box for me in terms of you're confident that, or you think that we've got an operational process for missing child. When this happened at the organisation I serve with, I immediately alerted Arvon, who was the health and safety manager at the time, asked him for the policy. He never came back to me, and I did escalate and raise it higher. So I think officers need to check that that is in place, and that it does bear scrutiny, and it is best practice, as Sarah said, in alerting the police right at the beginning, not just initiating a search and then thinking 2 hours later, oh, perhaps we ought to tell the police. That isn't acceptable to the police, and they will issue a warning if that's not complied with. So from that point of view, I still don't feel that we can sign this off today. Clearly, we have a policy already in existence, which has served us up until now. I think if Graham and other officers can turn this around pretty quickly, we can take this at another NPA, or you could delegate responsibility to another committee. But I'll leave that to you to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I'm going to go to Angie, please.
Good. Sorry. Safeguarding is massive. And I don't disagree with a lot of things that have been said. I think things are getting a bit crossed over. When you talk about a missing child, I don't understand in what context. Is that somebody just a child walking into a park event or something in the parks that's with a parent or a carer or with an organisation and a child goes missing? Or is it just some random child going missing? You don't have to answer that. This is just food for thought. If my child comes to me to a park, to something in the park, that the child is my responsibility as a parent. If my child goes missing, I'm going to go to whoever's in charge and say my child is missing and ask for help. Now, if you're saying a safeguarding that you want to be local parentis, that's different again. So that what you're saying is every child that comes into anything with national parks is you're now the parents. So you're taking the responsibility away from whoever's there. And this is where you need to be careful. If you're having local parentis, that's fine. I have local parentis in my other job, my youth project. So that means that I've done my criminal record check, the 99 check, which means just because you've got a criminal record check doesn't mean that you know about safeguarding. So what it means for me in my instance is that I understand what vulnerable is. And until we understand what vulnerable is, you won't get it right, because everybody's got their own idea of what a vulnerable person, adult or child is. Excuse me. So if we were going to do any kind of training, I would do it on what's vulnerable. And then you could start with getting a policy together for safeguarding in instances of when something might happen. As for travelling, I don't understand why a child would be travelling with a member of staff. Or somebody very vulnerable without the carer or parent or organisation who's taken care of them. I don't understand why they would be travelling with staff, but it does happen. So with my safeguarding training and knowing about vulnerable and having local parentis, I can put a child in my car and take them anywhere. Because I'm protected to the highest level, but I know the signs of something that might go awry. And if I put something in place to cover that, like take my colleague with me in the car to take the person to hospital, if I feel that needs to be, all this training helps with making those kind of decisions. I don't hear of accusations very often. I only hear of them in the news. I've not heard them at local. I've been working with young people for over 40 years. And I don't know of any within my peer group and within my work cohort of peers. I just think if you want a policy on safeguarding for missing children, I don't know what's triggered that to have this debate. Because I just think it's all got crossed over. It's all got crossed over, and I think that needs to be worked on to be very specific what you mean in the safeguarding points in the policy that you produce. You can't take the responsibility away from the parent unless you're prepared to be the local parentis.
Thanks, I'm just going to bring in Tegan.
Yeah, just correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, but my understanding is that what we're talking here is children visiting our sites.
Yeah.
So basically, care room, gas practice, although conceivably it could be events that we've held that are outside that, where we're responsible. Certainly, I don't think we're talking about local parentis or anything of that nature. I think the difference of opinion with Julie and myself was basically whether this is something in the safeguarding policy or whether this is on operational procedures. I'm more than happy that we need to illustrate to you that we have them. there. And to be honest, more than happy to delay approval of the policy. I still wouldn't argue it should be in the policy. You know, that's I'm fine. You know, your role is to seek assurance. It's a valid question to have assurance.
Right.
Only to say, following more from Tegryn was saying, that if we put it in the policy, and I can see that, you know, there could arguably be a place for it, that has to be aligned with something at an operational level, because the policy just creates a framework. So really what needs to be there is part of a risk assessment, part of an operational kind of safety assessment at a site-based level. So for as much as it's going to be in here, that's only one level, and it doesn't need that response. So we'll see what the sense.
Just to say, I agree with Tegryn and Graham. It doesn't need to be detailed in the policy. We just need a reference in the policy to the effect that we do have a process protocol for a missing child, which is operational and which exists within those areas that we own, are responsible for events, and just a paragraph on that. But we as members need to know that process and protocol exists. Thanks.
Julie, Vanessa?
I was just going to say, on the, as you say, the missing children, as you say, I've worked in an organisation where, as you say, you've got to have, and there's two sides to it. So sometimes, and it's not just the managers, as you say, at the park that are working, you've got to have a process so that your staff know what they need to do with. So it's either going to be a missing child because the parents have lost the child. So you might have the parents come into you, and you've got to have a process as to what your response is going to be to look for that child, or the other way around, whereas what they do if they found a lost child. And you have to be quite careful on that, because you might be the only person with that child at the time. But as you say, it is an operational process, but everyone at the site needs to know what that process is.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, I think just looking at the paper, I think we've got on page 11, paragraph 7.1, and got a section working safely and ensuring that all activities involving children, young and vulnerable adults fit to the appropriate risk assessment, which aims to manage risk of all kinds. Risk assessment will be in line with current authority guidance and health and safety policy, and will be carried out by people with a good understanding of safeguarding issues appropriate to the activity and/or setting. We could add in a reference there, perhaps, about that risk assessment needing to include, missing children. But I think it would be a risk assessment for each of the centres about how they would deal with that one different. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Chris? Let's try and wrap this up reasonably quickly as to what you want me to do.
Thank you. Yeah, it's we've been doing the New Year's Day swim for many years on New Year's Day, and we probably attract 10,000 people to the event. So we have a policy in place for a missing child. All our volunteers are all educated on the area, the zone that's clear. It's an area where there's a large pink flag that's on the day, but it's a sterile area that no one's allowed to go into, and we liaise with the police and all organisations. For the previous couple of years, we haven't had any issues, but last year we did have a missing child. And within about 5 or 6 minutes, the parents were located with the children, and it does work quickly, and it just goes to show that if you put planning in and with all the volunteers and all the organisations, it can work really quickly.
Thank you for that. I'm quite. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm quite liking the idea of what Sarah said about the sites, including that. I mean, would you be happy for that to approve this and include that?
Yes. Yeah.
Or do you want this to come back?
No, definitely not. Sorry.
Question first. What the people would like, whether they don't want to approve it, and it come back to MPA at the next possible opportunity. So I'm going to suggest that we delegate authority to delegate it to you to include on that 7.1 Sarah's suggestion. So I'm actually happy to propose that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. So I'm going to go to that. Rachel, did you want to say something else before we go to that vote?
It might be sensible, Di. Yeah, I put two things in the chat which you might not be able to see, but reflecting on the discussion, there's a few more men. So I think paragraph 3 in there on the scope of the policy would benefit from a bit more, which I think would help Angie's really excellent points about what are we talking about, what's in scope of this policy, and what do we do scope from this. So what are we actually talking about, or even section it. So we've already got a scope paragraph that could do with a look at. And also the paragraph on missing persons, I would say we've gone down the children route, but actually missing persons, and just say what we are and aren't, doing in terms of this particular policy, going back to the scope and referencing, linking, putting hyperlinks into the right procedures, policies and guidance. So that's the additional 2 amends I'd put, as well as the one that Sarah had mentioned. And then just a final one from me, which is my overall concern about delegating it, but as long as that is reassured, then I'm fine. There's something throughout there. There's one in the first aid section, there's one on the travel section, there's a few where they're balanced views. We're not really coming down on a hard line of when we wouldn't allow somebody safe to travel, be in a confined space, give first aid one-to-one and accompanied. There's a few in there of those instances which I would prefer if we actually give something a bit more specific in the policy, or again you could refer to a procedures document if it varies. But those are the few that I mentioned right at the beginning I'm a bit nervous of.
Okay. Right, well, I'm going to change my mind then. I'm going to suggest, if you don't mind, those members that have got some suggestions to put them forward and make sure you're satisfied with those. And then it comes back to MPA next time. That's what I'm suggesting. So I'm going to vote on that. I'm proposing that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? Okay.
Well done, Di. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, can I ask for comments by the end of the year then?
Yes.
Yeah, that
Which year?
Retract in, because that will help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even better. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right.
Do we get to have lunch?
Now, I'm mindful of the time. I was hoping we might finish, but I'm struggling. So I think we probably ought to break. So it's 10 to 2 now, isn't it? So do we want to start at again? Well, we've got budget thing now as well.
2. Yeah.
Can we do 2:05, quarter of an hour?
Check with the secretariat particularly.
Is that all right?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, fine.
Yes, so if we've got a quarter of an hour, I think, some mindful budget seminar, and we've still got a few items left to do. So it's 10 to 2 now. We will see you all at 2:05. Thank you very much. Sorry to rush you.
I was concerned about that last.
I'll do this in Welsh just to keep the web
Okay.
occupied. We're not really.
No.
Just to say, I'll do the next one in Welsh.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you, Georgia, Caroline, for speedily getting us back on track again. Welcome back all. We are on item 5424, Oriel Park Stakeholder Group, and the Director of Nature Recovery and Tourism is away, James Parkins. So Tegrin's going to do this for us, and I think you're going to do this in Welsh, aren't you?
Yep.
Great.
Okay, good. Nawr, symeiliad. Are we? Bob yn iawn? Grêt. Fel chi'n ymwybodol, dyn ni'n neud darn o waith i ddatblygu cynllun ar gyfer fusoddiad yn Oriel Park. Yn y gorffennol, ni wedi cael gweithdai gydag aelodau. Mae'n eitha anymarferol i ddod â pawb at ei gilydd, ond mwyn cael mewnbwn yr aelodau, y gofyn yw i gael dau o'ch chi i eisteddfod bod ni'n gallu cysylltu gyda chi mwyn sicrhau bod safbwydiau aelodau yn cael ei ystyried. Just sicrwydd bydd unrhyw benderfyniad mawr yn dod nôl i chi fel aelodau mewn cyfarfod yr awdurdod. Mae hwn jyst cael y mewnbwn yn rhan o'r broses. Felly, cytuno'r egwyddor a doi enw os gwelwch yn dda a cyfarfod.
Diolch, Tegrin. You can.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you, yn Saesneg.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know whether you have any specific members in mind, question, and whether there is a benefit in there being a balance of Welsh Government or not. But my key question is, do you have a sense of how long it's going to carry on for?
March.
It says
Until March, sorry.
4 meetings.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. March.
No, to be honest, enthusiasm, willingness to participate, ideas there. Somebody did suggest some names to me, and I can't actually remember who they were.
Well, I have had an expression of interest from Simon.
Okay. I think he was one.
So, and
I'll second him.
You're good. Okay, I'll propose him. You're seconding.
Dwi'n hapus hefyd.
You're happy too?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second.
Right, then, do I have anybody else who would like to be considered for these two positions? No.
I would find it interesting, but I could stand by as a person who's not attending, you know?
Yeah, reserve? Well, a reserve or?
I'm happy to sit as a reserve.
Okay.
Okay. We've got,
I suppose.
yes, okay, so let's, can we?
Are fe hogan wir? Are fe hogan wir?
Yeah, okay. I'll ask them to circulate to you with the information and then put the invites there unless we're in a
Right, so, do I need to vote on that?
Yeah.
So that, you've both been proposed and seconded, all those in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Anybody against? I think it was a majority anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. That's good. That's done. On to report 5524 member travel policy, and Caroline, our Democratic Service Manager, will be taking this item. Over to you, Caroline, please.
Thank you, Chair. So earlier this year, a request was made by a member of the authority to review the member's travel policy. It was given consideration by the People Services Committee in September of this year, and that committee asked the policy be circulated to all members for their comments. So we circulated that policy in October. I received 4 responses. Only one contains substantive comments, and most of the points raised are reflected in the revised policy. The changes to the policy are tracked and set out in the appendix to my report. As you can see, the policy hasn't been reviewed for some time, so a review was timely. It's been updated to reflect changes in ways of working since the policy was first developed, and it responds to members' requests for greater discretion in taking account of individual circumstances when travelling to approved duties. Members are asked to approve the revised policy.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Rosie.
Thank you very much to the Democratic Services Manager for making a really good job of the improvements and all the various things that everybody had suggested. I only just had a couple of questions, I think, which I did ping you, Caroline, and because I've been off power, I can't even remember whether I've had a response, or they may not even have got out. One was in section 5, the journey sharing. I would suggest avoiding putting into a policy the rates that are in use at the time. So to me, the rates should be something in your financial regs and procedures, etc. So I would just say there is a supplement to, you know, and then so likewise I would put subsistence rates somewhere else. You know, commonly they go into a finance info rather than have them in the policy. That's my personal view. And the only thing I don't understand was section 9, the penultimate paragraph of page 5, which says, and the limits which apply when an individual member claims in arrears for overnight accommodation costs do not then apply. That pickled my brain. I couldn't handle that one. Sorry. Anna will have sorted it out for me, I'm sure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rosie.
Otherwise, I'm very happy to propose.
Thank you. Did you want some bit more substance on that one to help you understand that one, ideally?
Caroline can take me on one side if it's helpful.
Okay. Okay. Julie, please.
Thank you, Chair. I can confess. Oh, I got an echo. Not sure why. I confess it was me that raised this initially, and it did come to the People's Services Committee. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there. Just like to thank Caroline very, very much for picking this up and running with it on top of everything else that she does. Excellent amendments. And also to Rosie, because it was Rosie that did the substantive track changes response, which she ran by me, and it encapsulated all of my thoughts and more besides. So Rosie has moved the recommendation. I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Julie. Do I have any further comments before I go to the vote? Gwyn, please.
Just a bit finicky. On the cover of the document, it says travel policy 2013, and that's been crossed out to 4. But 2024 even will be out of date next week. You know, so should it be from 2005 onwards?
Or should it be from when the date that it decided? I would have thought.
Even though, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But I agree totally with what you're saying about putting the rates in the policy.
The rates should go somewhere
They should
else.
be available. It should point out that the rates are available.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, so all those in favour of approving the policy, please raise your hands. Unanimous? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, members, for your input on that. Report number 5624, the independent member of the Standards Committee. And I'm going to pass over to Mike Kent, our monitoring officer, please.
Yes, thank you, members. You're aware of what this is about. The Standards Committee member, Vicky Tomlinson, an independent member, her term of office came to an end in September this year. Vacancy was advertised in local press in accordance with regulations. The appointments panel sat on 2 occasions. First, with one person to interview who wasn't successful. The second panel sat on the 20th of November 2024, where there was a rebuttal interview with Mr. John Hogg, and the panel concluded that he should be offered the appointment, and the recommendation therefore is for you to endorse that recommendation.
Thank you, Mike. Rosie.
And just come back to the points I made previously, Chair, you know, about in terms of openness and transparency, and whether we have the ability to do more than then effectively endorse the recommendation of the panel. And can I just check, because picking up on something Mike said, the vacancy was advertised as it has to in the press, you say.
Yeah.
Has it also gone on our website? Is there any other way which it's promoted?
It was advertised very fully.
Okay.
Because after the first round,
yeah, we did.
It was very poor, to be honest. We talked about that with the second campaign, and they didn't really produce any more a good candidate than the first one. And I think it's just such bad that people are disillusioned and don't want to get involved.
Yes, I don't know what push the boat out meant, but anyhow, that'd be useful for it to comment as to how we raise the profile of those public.
It's based on, it was advertised on social media, I think.
Okay, thank you.
But also, as I knew about it, I also pushed it out to my community. So who then push it out to the local areas, so or to anybody who I thought might be interested. So it's up to us as well to promote these positions as well as we can, I think.
Certainly at the next meeting, I would, at the next standards meeting, I think if that's the right place to make that comment rather than here, I think we should be expressing a concern about the fact that we're not, it clearly isn't an area of public service that is getting any traction. And yet actually, it's a really good place to get in some diversity because it's not a big obligation, etc. There you are.
Thank you. Tim?
Can I just ask, was that just advertised within Pembrokeshire or was that a Wales?
I presumed it was just Pembrokeshire, but.
Well, our website is not.
It's on our website.
I think social media as well.
Yeah.
So it could go anywhere, couldn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
It was advertised via authority's web recruit system. So wherever the authority advertises its jobs, which is not just going to be Pembrokeshire. I think it goes out on Indeed. Things, platforms like that. It was advertised via that.
I'm not quite sure what else we could have done, frankly.
Just to say, when it's an appointment that's particularly restrictive in terms of who can't.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you're involved with the county council, I think if you're involved with community councils or a clerk there, even if you're married to one of them, you can't do it there. So there are lots of people who would engage with the authority are not eligible to be on it.
So it should be ideal ground for for bringing diversity.
Yeah, it would be. To get to them.
Yes, difficult one, isn't it? Always.
Need to give that feedback in some way, please. In our monitoring report, perhaps.
Possibly.
Thank you.
So, Tim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, just saying something similar to what the monitoring officer said about people just don't want to get involved. You know, I think we had one with Pembrokeshire County Council. I approached a few people who I thought would be excellent, and yet, oh no, like, you know, and that's the sort of,
It's frustrating though for us as probably more especially for councillors than Welsh Government appointees because it's there's quite a lot of social media out there.
I know.
That's
right. And you think there would be people there.
So if, you know, it would be good for those people perhaps to come on board with some of these positions.
Just to comment that having been on both of the interview panels, I think the name before us is certainly an excellent candidate and will add a lot to our committee. And perhaps in time, the committee, as you say, Rosie, it would be helpful for members, especially the independent members, to perhaps identify other mechanisms for involvement. I know that it would certainly benefit from us, I think, to have the opportunity to speak to standards committee members more so than just the committee.
Absolutely.
Perhaps just, you know, on that basis, for them to feel more involved, although their role is a very clear and an independent one, so that it's important that that's maintained as well.
Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to move the recommendation that
yes,
Mr. Hogg is recruited and appointed.
Happy to second.
Madeline is happy to second. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That's everyone. Yes, that's everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. And the final agenda item you'll be pleased to hear is report number 5724, replacement finance system. We've talked about it before. And Catherine Evans, our head of finance and fundraising, will take this item. Thank you, Catherine.
Hello, good afternoon all. I'll keep it short because I'm sure you've had a very long meeting. And more meetings I do. So just we have addressed the finance software several times now over the last summer about some of the issues that we're having with it. And this paper addresses that the fact that we do have some very high risk, which is very high risk is that, you know, the software, the current software which is developed or supported is quite out of date now as well. We've done some, about the last 3 months, we've done a lot of groundwork to look at potential replacements. We've identified one. So on the basis that, I'm assuming that you've read the paper, the paper is asking your permission or to approve the acquisition of a new finance system and upgrading our current electronic point of sale software.
Thank you. Rosie.
Just a couple of points I think arise from this. The first is the immediate and the self-evident need to change the finance system and EPOS in tandem with it. So that's kind of one. Sorry. I wasn't sure what that was.
No, trying to sort something out now.
That was one set of decisions. And then the other one is the sort of strategic and the risk-related issue of, in a sense, how did we get into this pickle of not having enough sight to finding ourselves doing something relatively precipitately without a longer lead time for consideration. I'm not asking for an answer to that, but I think it's a lesson for us all in what is clearly a kind of high exposed ICT, cyber resilience, changing systems. I can see my right honourable colleague nodding away over there. So I think we should ask ourselves that question. Having said that, I think it's a really clearly presented paper. Thank you for that. I think the conclusions on which system to choose are ever so slightly less clear to me, but you know, it's great to see that there has been good consultation with national parks. I think the work language context is unfortunate, but it is probably where we are with these systems. I just asked a question, did we consult with the Work Government Centre for Digital Public Services tool? Because that sort of falls into their thing, at least awareness and perhaps advice. WLGA and or other ALBs in Wales. But the bottom line, I'm supportive of the need to invest. I'm very happy to move the recommendation. But I think from audit corporate services point, I would ask that we get a sort of a longer term look at the risk of our IT vulnerable systems or systems coming towards the end of their lease or agreements or the end of their useful lives.
Thank you. Rachel, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Rosie. Happy to pick that one up. Ask somebody to bring a paper to audit at the right moment on that one. That would be useful, wouldn't it, to get a wider picture? That's fine. I'm also happy to support this, Catherine. We need it, and hopefully that will help us. We've had a bit of a warning from audit as well, haven't we, for next time? So this will help with all of that. So that's great. So totally supportive. Just a couple of questions or points. I did wonder about sort of GDPR angle of things because it's cloud-based. I don't think payroll or anything is in this, is it? It's nothing to do with that. No, you've shown. But just in case there is anything else, once you're in the cloud, personal data, even invoices, names, addresses, there will be some stuff. So that's worth covering off perhaps. And then the other one to mention, it's sad that there aren't any commercial savvy people out there taking these opportunities to do these things bilingually or indeed multilingually. I do find it a little bit difficult to believe because if you take a global international view, there are definitely multilingual software systems out there and packages. So it is a bit, yeah, with regret. The only thing I did want to change though factually in the paper is just to be careful because the old Welsh Language Act was about the external facing services to the public, but actually the new standards are different. So the operational standards do require you to ensure that you've got systems internally that staff are using. If they're using it a lot, it actually is their right to work in Welsh. So if you haven't got the systems in it, but just to push back a bit so you are aware, that is actually a legal requirement. And that's it from me. Oh, sorry, no, the most important one of all is the impact on our bottom line. So obviously we want to spend this money, but just a bit of a feel of what that then means, because it's an ongoing commitment for us as well, isn't it, longer term? And those are my three questions, Catherine. Diolch.
Just to respond on that one, in terms of security of information and data protection and sustainability, they provided me with all those policies. IT have looked at the security strategies that they've got and protection they've got in place, and they're more than happy with. End of the day, the solution that we're recommending is Sage, and obviously that's one of the biggest companies in so they just got it all covered. But IT have looked over their information security policies, and they're happy to recommend that. GDPR, I do need to do a data impact assessment, and that will go up to Sarah Burns if the obviously solution is approved today. But they have GDPR policies and sustainable policy. They've got all that in place. And in terms of identifying the exchequer, the way it's developed this year is that we started having problems with the solution to try to address those issues. It came to we identified that the fact that the solution wasn't being, the exchequer wasn't being developed anymore, and that we were having problems with support, even though I tried to improve what we had by going up a couple of the last few versions they had to try to get that done. It took months, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So that was enough to say, look, constant crashes for staff, data corruption, not being supported was really getting to the point that we had to look or start looking elsewhere. So it has been, it's been going on for, certainly since Easter, but we're trying to improve it first before going to have to go out to get a new solution.
But I think it's keeping that IT trajectory because they are changing so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Julie, please.
Oh, hi, Catherine. Thank you for your excellent paper. Item G on your paper, implementation costs, has a very wide range from 17k to 43k. So I hope that you'll be keeping that down to the lower end as far as possible, appreciating that we need an extra pair of hands to help with that, which is covered in item H. You won't be surprised that I ask you this, but how confident are you that Sage will actually provide the support that you expect, given yours and my experiences elsewhere?
Yeah, well, I think we've dealt with Sage for years. I mean, Sage is a it's world renowned. Sage Intacct is one of their current programs that they are developing and progressing. They obviously cut down how many pieces, accounting software they've got. But this is one of the key ones that they're recommending for their not-for-profit customers. Obviously working with Sage in the past, there's something that they do sort things out for you at the end of the day. But I can't guarantee that any software provider we choose is going to be the right one, because we can't trial, we can't demo them. They won't allow us to do that, or we're highly reliant on the demo they give us. But believe me, one of the reasons we chose a Sage Intacct, one is cost. Number two, the staff felt that this was the cleanest version, but more than anything, it seemed to be able to find refinements much better than the other ones. So we have tried to address all the sort of issues we come across in the public sector in making our choice. So we've, but they're all very similar and looking clean at the end of the day. So, but it's going to be a risk, whichever one we choose. You don't know.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. Very happy to support, but I know there isn't actually a recommendation, just a conclusion, unless I'm missing a page.
It is actually, Julie, on page 385.
Yeah, I've also mentioned it in 8.4.
Ah, right, okay. I found it. It was at the beginning rather than at the end. Thank you. Yeah, happy to support.
See that final recommendation.
Yeah.
Next one on the paper, we're still wavering a little bit, and we just needed clarification from Sage about the sustainability, the data protection, the information security, and confirmation that that cost that they've given us, because they are the lowest, that they were going to stick to that.
Okay, thank you. Rachel, please.
Sorry, I just wanted to come back on my impact on the budget question. So is it covered? Does something else have to go, especially given it could be the higher end, couldn't it? It's an ongoing liability, yeah.
It's going to be at the it's got to be cheap at the end of the day. I mean, no software solution, but the annual license is going to be between 15 to 16, which is cheaper than going to the 18,000 with Exchequer on the cloud, with no improvement in functionality at all, and if anything, more difficult.
Yes.
I think, sorry, yeah.
But in the 25-26 budget, that cost has been, has been factored in. But we're hoping that we will make better some cost savings from our IT, for example. They're in our office every day. virtual servers, licensing, we should be able to save a little bit in that side of things as well, because it'll be cloud-based. At the moment, we're hosting on our actual servers, and there's problems with data. We're clogging it all up with images and invoices, etc. So that's been causing an issue since I've been here.
Thank you.
Very much. Sorry, sometimes it cuts out with the sound, so I think I'm missing some crucial bits of time. My fault. Diolch yn fawr.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hopeful, wouldn't it, that we'd be saving, it might not be for a year or so, but down the line, we're hoping that everything's a little bit more efficient, people aren't so frustrated, and you'll get things done quicker. And
we've got a member of staff at the moment, she's the main data processor. She's being crashed out at least 10 times a day.
And that's just soul destroying, isn't it? The motivation will soon lose. You lose that, don't you? Good. Any other comments? I've had a proposal by Rosie. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Vanessa. Any other comments? No, all those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. And I think that is the end. That is the end of the meeting. Did you want to say something?
Yes. Just going back to the standards committee report. I remember that after the first advert went in, and we produced very many by quality, we then revised the wording of the advert to make it a bit more inclusive and user friendly. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to do the trick, but at least we did go down that route.
Thank you, Mike. That's really useful.
That's what I was trying to say to Guy.
Yes.
Sorry,
Thank you. Before you, I know we've got a budget seminar soon, more or less instantly. I think we're staying on the same link.
Yes.
So if you're online, please stay. If you can in the room, please stay. Thank you for all those who were able to come in today. Sorry that you couldn't join us, if those of you are online. I know for specific reasons, some. It is the last meeting in the green room, 28. Cheers.
Yes.
So it'll be.
You can have a party afterwards.
Yeah. There will be, the meetings will be online for the foreseeable future. I wish everybody a very, very happy Christmas, Nadolig Llawn, and a very peaceful, and I know that there's quite a few of you are quite poorly as well, so I hope you aren't struck down by something gruesome over Christmas. There's nothing worse. Hopefully you've got rid of it out over the way beforehand, but let's hope we don't have too many storms, but wishing you the very best, and spend time with your family and loved ones. So welcome to the budget meeting. Thank you.
Yeah,